Hello everybody, my name is Ivo Gabrowitsch and I'm going to talk about type specimens. I'll go over what you need to include, I'll answer what is important, what is not, I'll feature some well-made examples so you hopefully walk away with some good tips and tricks to make your next type specimen even better. Before we start, please allow me to introduce myself briefly. Last year I founded Fontwerk, where we craft modern typefaces and provide font engineering and type design services. We launched fontwerk.com along with 10 type families in July 2020. Prior to that, I was marketing director at FontShop International. Following the takeover by Monotype, I worked in a number of different roles, most recently as senior director of marketing for brands such as MyFonts, Linotype, FontShop, Fonts.com and Font Explorer X. I'm also trained as a media designer for digital and print media, and I'm an engineer of print and media technology. So in a nutshell, I do font marketing. Let us first answer the question, what are type specimens? In short, they are tools to assess fonts. Users of type, normally designers, use them to evaluate the typeface's suitability to their needs. Specimens can be printed or digital. My presentation won't be about printed specimens, although many aspects of what I will be talking about do apply to them as well. We will look at digital specimens instead, and they can come to you as either websites or PDFs. People use them after they have assessed whether a typeface has the right character or personality for their project. This first part of the decision process often happens through different media such as email newsletters, blogs, or social media. If users decide the typeface a general fit, they check for some important practical aspects such as the range of styles to make sure it covers their general needs, or the cost to make sure the font is within their budget. If the typeface is still in with a chance, they look for detailed information. And this is where digital specimens come into play. Users study it in their browser by checking the online catalog or a microsite, or they download the PDF specimen. That's why I like to see PDF specimens as both a visually appealing summary of the steps taken up to this point, as well as the font marketing small print. Sometimes it's also used as a later reference or even documentation. Today I'll explain which kind of detailed information users are looking for and what details you should include in your PDF specimen. Before we get there, I'd like to thank my friend Mark Bolton. Mark is currently working on an extensive research project that focuses on digital specimens, aiming to provide UX guidance on how to best present a typeface for evaluation. A few days ago, Mark has revealed his findings on typespecimens.xyz. He was also kind enough to give me an exclusive preview over them so I could double check my thoughts on this topic. I strongly recommend to check the project website and to follow his research project. I'd like to share some examples from foundries that I think do PDF specimens quite well. Of course, there are many more than the ones I'm showing, as this is just a small selection of some of my personal favorites. The first one is from Black Foundry. A glyph set is among the must-haves. To make it easier to read, it's important to categorize everything, for instance, show uppercase and lowercase Latin first, uppercase and lowercase Cyrillic second, etc., etc. Another must-have is the design highlights. Black Foundry do a great job here by presenting them short and crispy on one of the first pages of the specimen. Next example is from Cape Arcona, a small German foundry. What I like here is the use of color as well as the educational approach. Even though such content is not the primary kind of information customers are looking for, I believe we should always try to educate them about new technology like OpenType or variable fonts whenever possible, in order for them to learn how to get more out of type. I also like Cape Arcona's way of showing their typefaces in use, in this case with posters of a fictitious exhibition. Commercial type specimens are another favorite of mine. This is quite the opposite approach, as they appear very clean and reduced, using a strict grid and showing a lot of example content at different weights and sizes. Also very useful is that every significant language gets its own paragraph, in this case Swedish, Tagalog, Vietnamese and Turkish. And although I think it makes sense to feature this kind of contextual usage, Mark's research has shown that this is not what customers are primarily looking for. I'll get back to this later. Code-type foundries seem to prefer a more colorful approach. While this is a pretty classic weight and styles overview, they managed to make it look fresh and appealing. What I really like about them is the fictitious use cases. In this example, a responsive design for an airline. They show more examples so readers can get a good idea of what the typeface is able to do. A new foundry is Extraset. I couldn't find PDFs on their recently launched site, but prior to their launch, they shared this one. This comes in a typical modern Swiss approach, which results in a pretty unique style, at least compared to other type foundries. I also find the use of white space remarkable, as well as the carefully chosen sample words. Everything with Elon Musk in it sounds like the future, doesn't it? Another one of my favorites is from Swiss foundry Linotype. It has everything included that users expect and even more. Some pages even remind me of a design magazine. It has an interesting dramaturgy, and despite its comprehensive size, it's 40 pages long, it never gets boring. They focus a lot on features, large samples, and differences between the two families, GTESD text and GTESD display. Kilotype have a rather reduced specimen. No color, no images, not many words, just plain type and most relevant detailed information. For instance, all OpenType features on a single page. And big type. Pretty basic stuff that never gets old. Another newer label is Mass Driver. They start with displaying interesting glyphs and shapes, so you immediately have the feeling that this typeface might be something special even without reading the copy. I also like the variety of contextual usages. You see different kinds of headlines and body text for different styles. Last but not least, a type specimen from the legendary Dutch underwear team. Although Zeitung is a big family, they found a nice way to show weights, italics, and small caps on a single page. I encourage you to check your favorite foundry specimens to see what you like most and what you don't like. Even though there are some kind of rules you should follow, it's your very own font marketing small print and should have a unique style in the best case and include the information you find most appropriate. But what are these rules? Of course, there are no strict rules here, as you have already seen in the variety of specimens I've shown, but I think there are some pieces of information that really need to be in a specimen. I mentioned Mark's research project before. Go check his list of top tasks and design recommendations. I must admit that my list slightly differs from his, because although I trust a well-done research statistics, I also like to challenge them. So long story short, the must-haves from my point of view are: first, show the character of your typeface. There are many different ways to present a typeface's character. Finding your own way is probably the most difficult part. Number 2, show design, technical or any other kinds of highlights. Remember the Black Foundry approach? This can be one way to present them. I'll show another way in one of the following slides. Number 3 is language support. This is usually a list, but you can be creative here, of course. Number 4 is weights and styles, and this should also be a no-brainer, I think. Another no-brainer is the glyphs overview. Number 6 is OpenType features. According to the research, it is not as important to users, but I recommend to document them in a specimen for later reference. And number 7 is a clear call to action. Imagine the reader has finally decided to buy a license of your typeface. Shouldn't she have easy access to that? Aside from the must-haves, there are some further nice-to-haves that should also be considered. One is contextual usage, like body text or word marks, for instance. Since trial fonts offer a much easier way to put a typeface into the right context, this is not as important as it used to be. I would consider to include some short examples nevertheless. Another nice to have is technical information, such as information about hosting, trials, licensing, formats, variable fonts, and pricing. Particularly the pricing part is important to users. However, since this might be subject to change, it doesn't always make sense to include it. Number 3 is the design story or the background information of the typeface. The brutal truth here is that users care much less about it than we think. To me, it wouldn't feel right not to include them though. The same is true for designers, unfortunately. Users don't care who designed it. But I truly believe we should celebrate those fantastic people whenever possible. Number 5, information about your foundry. Well, it doesn't hurt to use one page at least for some marketing blurb, does it? And another nice to have is related typefaces or pairing suggestions. I like to link to further options. Marketing experts call it upselling. Most users don't care though. So let's have a look at what this all means in particular. I'll be using one of our own label specimens to explain each part to give an idea about our thinking behind each page. Hopefully this will help you making the right decisions for your own specimens. Let's have a look at the format first. I think it should be landscape mode since often it will be read on a screen. Most screens are aligned horizontally and even a mobile device can work that way. And if you want to print it, it works too. As said before, usually users already know whether the typeface generally fits to their project when they have decided to check the specimen. So their core question has already been answered. However, I believe it doesn't hurt to further demonstrate it by starting with a large title and by displaying some interesting glyphs and shapes as early in the document as possible. We do this with this cover that features a full screen image that is somewhat related to the story of the typeface. Your cover can be different, of course, as you have seen before. But when using a photo, either here or later in the document, consider the final file size of a specimen, as this is still an important issue since the specimen can be sent via email or downloaded via mobile. The cover is followed by a credits and details page, including names of everybody involved, legal and technical details, available licenses and formats, recommended uses and contact information. Although this may be seen as a boring page, we add this to answer the highlights in a rather unusual way. I call it the typeface's value proposition, which in this case is, can a typeface make the world a better place? Well, it can try to. 25% of all designer royalties will be donated. This is different than providing design highlights, but I think and hope it should work as well. This page also answers important questions like the number of languages and styles, the pricing, and it encourages readers to get in touch with us. The next pages are supposed to give a better impression of the typeface's character or personality by showing some examples of typesetting at certain weights and sizes. Another one here in dark mode that also includes some first impressions of extra languages such as Cyrillic, Greek or Vietnamese if supported by the font. Another must-have is the weight overview. It's also another good opportunity to mention Greek, Cyrillic or other additional scripts, as well as small caps or similar extras, as long as it is included in the fonts. We also give a preview of what users can expect next about the typeface, like italics or a broader variety of widths, in this case, for instance. We continue with a page that features some contextual usages, in particular fictitious logos, word marks or headlines, to show a bit more of the typeface's character. Then we have some body text samples. Many foundries spend several pages on this part, but since we also offer trial fonts for free, we keep this part short. We believe the best way to investigate the usability for body text is by the users themselves, using the trial fonts. As said before, this is not really what users are looking for in specimens, but if kept short, I don't see a reason not to include it. We only add a second page to also show some Cyrillic and Greek body text samples in different sizes. And one side note here, make sure not to use copyrighted text. This one, text by Jules Verne, is free for all to use and build upon without permission or fee, since it entered public domain in most countries. The language support is actually one of the top questions people have. It's also a good opportunity to present your typeface in small sizes. The smaller the size, the more languages it supports. One of the most asked for information is the glyphs overview. You could do this for any weight, but I think the regular weight does the job. For some families where the italic differs a lot from the uprights, for instance, we have a several overview for them. As a service for the reader, I recommend to provide a categorized list of glyphs. The next page shows OpenType features. We also explain them a bit, since too many users still don't understand this topic. This is the part where the specimen becomes less of a marketing tool but more of a documentation resource. It was actually one of the main reasons we decided to create PDF specimens in the first place. These kind of features are still difficult to present on a website. And again, I don't believe in OpenType features as a sales argument. Stylistic sets or small caps don't sell, unfortunately. But once you have bought a license for a font, you should be able to find a documentation somewhere about what the font is capable of. Another nice side effect is this part is also a good opportunity to make clear which glyphs or attributes are default. For example, the different figure sets. We are getting to the lesser important parts, next one being the story about the typeface. Another side note here, When writing your story, you should do it in a way that helps the graphic designer selling it to their clients. At least think more about what your users may be interested in, not so much what was interesting to you when designing it. You can also include a bio of yourself, or if you are a foundry, of the designers of the typeface. I'm pretty sure that the further we go, the less readers we have. To lose them completely, we explain our license model and available font formats. But jokes aside, for those few who do look for this particular information, it is included, of course. Last but not least, we also talk a bit about us as a foundry, because why not? Readers who aren't convinced yet might be interested in other options. Also, as a service to our customers, we recommend some potential typefaces that pair well with the main one. The very last page includes a call to action. This way, the end of the PDF doesn't become a dead-end street. And that's it. Less than 20 pages in total with, I believe, all important information included, plus some nice-to-have content. Let me finish by summarizing the must-haves again. 1 is the character. 2, design or technical highlights. 3, language support. 4, weights and styles. 5, glyph overview. 6, open type features. And 7, a clear call to action. Although readers consider everything else secondary, I encourage you to include some nice-to-haves or whatever you can think of anyway. I hope this was somewhat useful. I wish you best of luck with your next type specimen. If you are watching this presentation on YouTube, feel free to share your design in the comments below. Danke a lot and take care.